To understand whether or not Godzilla is immortal, we need to define what immortality actually means, because depending on your definition, Godzilla may or may not be immortal. In popular culture, we tend to think of immortals as being invincible as well, and that's how it is for most of the monsters in the Godzilla franchise. But that's not necessarily true for Godzilla himself. Although he is very powerful, he's far from invincible. In fact, there have been several occasions where Godzilla has come close to death or even died altogether. So, if we define immortality as being completely invincible, then no, Godzilla is definitely not immortal. However, if we take a closer look at the term itself, which comes from the Latin word immortal, meaning not subject to death, we can see that it doesn't automatically mean invincibility. It simply means freedom from death. And there are different ways to interpret this. For example, when you hear the term immortal, do you think of someone who will live forever, or someone who cannot die? Well, both interpretations are correct, but they are not the only ones. The term immortal can also refer to something that does not have a limited lifespan. And this interpretation seems to be the one that the Toho company went with when creating Godzilla. You see, throughout the history of the Godzilla franchise, we have seen many different versions of the character. In some movies, he's a gigantic monster who rampages across the city, causing widespread destruction and killing thousands of people. And in others, he's portrayed as a more heroic figure who defends Japan against other monsters. But no matter which version you look at, there is one thing that remains constant. And that is the fact that Godzilla is always shown as having an incredibly long lifespan. He was created during the nuclear fallout following World War II and has been around ever since. This means that Godzilla is technically immortal, because he does not have a limited lifespan like humans do. However, this does not make him invincible. In fact, there have been several instances where Godzilla has been mortally wounded. In the original 1954 film, for example, he was nearly killed by the oxygen destroyer, a powerful weapon created by the Japanese military. And in the 2016 film, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, he was critically injured while fighting against King Ghidorah. But despite being mortally wounded in these films, Godzilla did not die. Instead, he was able to recover from his injuries and live on. So it could be argued that Godzilla is immortal in the sense that he cannot be killed, but he is not invincible because he can and has been severely injured in the past. Another argument for Godzilla being considered mortal rather than immortal is the fact that he ages like any other living creature. As he gets older, he becomes slower and weaker, which makes him more vulnerable to attacks from his enemies. This would not happen if Godzilla was truly immortal. However, it should be noted that Godzilla's aging process is much slower than that of humans. For example, in the 2019 film Godzilla, King of the Monsters, it is revealed that Godzilla has been alive for 37 years, and yet he still appears to be in his prime, which suggests that even though he does age, it happens at a much slower rate than other species. So if we take all of this into consideration, I believe that the best way to answer the question of whether or not Godzilla is immortal is to say that it depends on how you define the term. If by immortal you mean completely invincible, then no, Godzilla is not immortal. But if by immortal you mean not subject to death or having a limited lifespan, then yes, Godzilla is immortal. What do you think? Do you agree with my assessment? Or do you think that Godzilla is truly immortal, invincible, and forever? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to hit that like button if you haven't already. Now let's move on to the next question, which is, how strong is Godzilla's bite force? Now that we've established whether or not Godzilla is immortal, let's talk about how strong his bite force is. You see, Godzilla's bite force is often underestimated, but it's actually incredibly powerful. In fact, it is so strong that it has been responsible for some of the most devastating attacks that he has ever launched. For example, in the 2014 film, Godzilla's bite force was strong enough to completely destroy the Muto, a massive alien creature that was one of the main antagonists of the film. And in the 2019 film, Godzilla's bite force was strong enough to kill King Kong, who is arguably the strongest kaiju in the monsterverse, with a single bite. So how strong is Godzilla's bite force exactly? Well, unfortunately, this is a bit difficult to say. That's because there is no official measurement of Godzilla's bite force. Most of the time, filmmakers use the bite forces of real-life animals as a basis for their creations. For example, the T-Rex from the Jurassic Park franchise has a bite force of around 12,000 pounds per square inch, and the Godzilla from the Monsterverse is often compared to the T-Rex. both in terms of its size and its strength. Assuming that Godzilla has a similar bite force to the T-Rex would mean that he could easily bite through concrete and metal, which is consistent with what we've seen in the films. However, it's important to remember that Godzilla is not just a big lizard. He's a radioactive monster with atomic breath and the ability to regenerate from almost any injury. This means that he is not bound by the same rules as real-life animals, and his bite force could potentially be much stronger than that of the T-Rex. Unfortunately, there is no way to know for sure how strong Godzilla's bite force is. But if you had to make a guess, I would say that it's probably around 20,000 pii, maybe even higher. This would be enough to bite through pretty much anything that he encounters, including concrete, metal, and even other. Of course, this is just my opinion. I'd be interested to hear what you think Godzilla's bite force is down in the comments. Finally, let's move on to the last question, which is, why does Godzilla attack humans? Godzilla is a kaiju, a Japanese term that literally translates to strange beast. In the early days of the franchise, these creatures were seen as a metaphor for the destructive power of nuclear weapons, and Godzilla himself was created as a physical manifestation of the nuclear fallout that followed World War II. However, over the years, the Godzilla franchise has evolved, and the character has become more of a heroic figure who defends Japan against other monsters. Even so, Godzilla still occasionally attacks humans, and it can be a bit confusing to see why he does this, considering that he is supposed to be on our side. There are a few possible explanations for why Godzilla attacks humans. In some cases, it's simply because he's trying to defend his territory. Godzilla is the king of the kaiju, and he sees humans as a potential threat to his dominance. This is why he often attacks human settlements and kills people who get in his way. In other cases, Godzilla's attacks on humans are a result of his atomic breath. You see, Godzilla's atomic breath is an incredibly powerful weapon, but it's also very dangerous for him to use. Each time he breathes out a blast of atomic energy, it weakens him and makes him more vulnerable to attacks from his enemies. Because of this, Godzilla often tries to avoid using his atomic breath, unless he has no other choice. Unfortunately for humans, this sometimes means getting caught in the crossfire. When Godzilla is fighting against another monster, his atomic breath can often be seen as a threat to humans, and they will often try to stop him from using it. This can lead to confrontations between Godzilla and humans, even though they are technically on the same team. Sometimes, though, it's not the humans who start the fight. In a small number of cases, Godzilla has attacked humans simply because he was angry or agitated. For example, in the 2014 film, Godzilla becomes enraged after seeing the Muto and immediately begins attacking the city. This shows that Godzilla is not always rational, and that he can lash out at humans even when there is no provocation. Ultimately, though, I think it's safe to say that most of Godzilla's attacks on humans are unintentional. He's not out to get us, but sometimes his immense power and strength accidentally cause massive destruction and loss of life. It's up to us humans to respect his power and stay out of his way, lest we become collateral damage in his battles against other monsters. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please be sure to like and subscribe and leave me a comment down below with your thoughts on any of the topics I covered. I'll see you next time.